As the child of two Mexican immigrants, I grew up hearing both English and Spanish spoken in my house. And sometimes when I'm eating a particularly spicy dish with my family, perhaps my mom overdid it with the chili this time, when one of them ends up sniffly from the spice burning their sinuses, the other will turn to them and ask, ¿Te enchilaste? Enchilaste is a conjugated version of the word enchilar, and it's one of those words I always wish had a direct English translation, but just as with many others, this falls into the vein of words that needs an entire English sentence to define rather than one simple word. Besides just being a term used to describe seasoning something with chili, it is also used in contexts like the one I described earlier, wherein someone becomes incredibly overwhelmed by the burning they feel from the spice in their food. As someone who loves spicy food, going out to eat with friends, and since not many of my friends speak Spanish, it's not an uncommon experience for me to find myself in a situation where a word like enchilada would be incredibly useful, but not being able to use it because they won't understand what the heck I was saying. Well, there are close enough English substitutes that I could and have used before, like simply asking if they're overwhelmed by their food. Overwhelmed is an incredibly open ended and imprecise word, and could just as easily confuse someone. Overwhelmed? Overwhelmed over what? There's a lot someone could be overwhelmed over, and most of the time, this word is used in emotional or mental contexts, not even physical ones. A word like this is not just explicit to Spanish, though. I found words for this experience in languages like Mandarin or Indonesian, which likely stems from the fact that these are countries that have distinctly spicy food and had the need to develop a word for such a specific experience. For example, the Sichuan cuisine of China is particularly iconic for its spicy food. The Sapir-Whorf hypothesis argues that language is developed as a result of cultural need. For example, the Inuit tribes of the Arctic and subarctic have almost 50 different words for kinds of snow, thanks to their need to distinguish between even the smallest differences for their everyday lives. In our case, these cultures regularly use chilies and spicy ingredients in comparison to English-speaking countries that typically don't. The former developed the vocabulary to describe the experience, and the latter didn't. However, the modern-day United States is rich with cultural foods that do use spicier ingredients, like soul food from the States or cuisines brought in by immigrants. I mean, half the country used to be Mexico at one point. And so I believe it would be worthwhile to have our own way of expressing this experience too. And so for this project, I took it upon myself to come up with a word that English speakers would be able to use to describe this experience. My first instinct was simply to adopt enchilar into English. Both it and Spanish are Latin-based languages and share many prefixes and suffixes. For example, en at the beginning of the word is one shared by the two, meaning to put into or cause to be. So by replacing the ending suffix with something more English appropriate, like ate, a suffix essentially meaning to put something into a state of being, and turning the word into enchilate would create a word that means to cause something to go into a state of spice. I think it would further encapsulate the experience, however, by adding the prefix over at the front, similar to the word overwhelm in English, to finally become the word overenchilate, the experience of being overwhelmed by spicy food.